Hey there, it's Irene Lyon. Welcome to this channel, to this YouTube video, to this world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. My name is Irene Lyon, and I am all about helping you understand what it means to heal at the nervous system level and become your own medicine. And I get lots of great questions, and that actually forms the bulk of what I do here on this channel and the questions that I answer and the education I give you. And one is so obvious that I can't believe I haven't ever done a video on this, or at least I don't think I have. And it was someone saying the other day, but Irene, we can't just work on the nervous system. We have to work on all the other things in the body. There's so much more than just the nervous system. And I was like, that's a very good point. And I realized that perhaps that person isn't familiar with how things work when I work with people one-on-one or in group or in programs. So I'm going to break that down so that you see that the nervous system is still at the helm, if you will, of this work. And I should say, when you do get into this work and you start working with it, whether through me or someone else who's a qualified and highly experienced somatic practitioner, that they understand and that you understand what's happening. So first and foremost, when I say nervous system, I mean the autonomic nervous system. That is part of our peripheral nervous system, and it governs our fight, flight, and freeze responses. It also governs all of our internal organs, our blood pressure, our hormonal release, immune system processes, gut processes, you name it. It's very, very important. So if you were to take a drink of water and that goes into your system, you're not having to think about how that water digests and absorbs into your cells to keep you hydrated, or if you don't need the hydration, how that gets processed in the kidneys so you pee it out. So quick little, piece there. That is what your autonomic nervous system is. It governs those survival responses, and it also governs the parts of our system that we don't need to think about. Thank goodness. So that's what I mean when I say autonomic nervous system. There are different nervous systems within our system, namely the central nervous system, which is our brain and spinal cord. And this is where it gets interesting. So if you think of that peripheral nervous system, I'm going to give you another visual in a moment to kind of put into your mind's eye and feel into and think about. But that peripheral nervous system that is the autonomic nervous system, it touches every part of your body. It doesn't just live in the brain. When it mounts a stress response, so let's just say we have something bad happen to us, a shock trauma, chronic stress, adversity growing up. I have many more articles and videos on that, so I'll post a few below so you can see what that part of my work is if you're new here. But when we have a bad thing happen to us, the system mounts a response to protect, to defend, or to shut down based on the situation. Just like it mounts a response when you take a drink of water to do the things it needs to do with that water. So if you have this threat, this bad thing, this scary thing happen to you, the system pumps out the chemicals, and it's like, it just goes everywhere. I'm having this image of putting a drop of dye in water, like blue dye, and it goes everywhere. It doesn't just stay in one part of that water, it goes everywhere. It's the same with our survival response. It's the same with our stress response. So that nervous system response impacts everything. It impacts how our heart rate is, how our digestion works. It impacts our muscles. It braces our tissues. The fascia in the body tightens. Our brain is impacted because it is bombarded with those stress chemicals. Now, of course, a one-off trauma is not a huge deal, but when we have got repeated stresses, repeated adversities, repeated traumatic events, a lot of times we call them micro traumas, chronic stress, we're being bombarded by those stress chemicals 24/7. And then the organs, the cardiovascular system, the immune system, the digestive system, the brain system, it all shifts and it gets impacted, usually for the worst, right? This is what deteriorates us. This is what is part of our aging process, is that onslaught of chemicals breaking things down. Now, the other thing that our nervous system impacts, because I've mentioned just what occurs in you here in your body, it interacts with how we relate to other people, how we relate to the environment. Because if we have what one of my teachers, Kathy Kane, would say, if we have our nervous system and our survival physiology running the front of the bus, driving the front of our bus that is our human organism, it's going to impact everything that we come into contact with on that road and the people on the bus. So if you imagine the people on the bus, those are the organs, the chemicals, the tissues, the blood pressure, the immune system, the hormonal system, the reproductive system, all of it. If the passengers on that bus are your systems, your physiological systems, then anything that bus comes into contact with is the interaction with the environment. And we know when folks have got stored traumatic stress and unresolved, unhealed, especially early trauma, it impacts our safety with other people. It impacts our ability to trust people. And then this is where we get all sorts of interesting behavior disorders and all the things that are in the diagnostic manual for psychiatry called the DSM, where we have all the mental illnesses that show an individual who is not able to fully interact and pick up cues, or is in some ways not attuning to the situation. It's because this survival physiology is running them and they don't know how to come out of that loop. I'm simplifying that, but in many ways, that's the gist of it. The other thing that occurs when we have this survival stress, this autonomic nervous system turned on, those fight, flight, freeze responses that I mentioned, when that is running the front of our show, we don't see the environment in an accurate way, or we don't see it at all, and then we miss things. Danger comes into our path and we don't even know it's there before it's already harming us, is one example. So if I think back to one of my teachings, one of my learnings when I was studying the Feldenkrais method, Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais drew this great, very simple graph or bunch of circles. And in the middle of this picture was this small circle, and he had that NS, nervous system. And then another circle around it was, I think, the cardiovascular, and then muscular, and then endocrine, and then I think it was gut, and then relational, and then environmental. So it just came out into this great big scope, but in the very middle was the nervous system. And if you were to draw a line through that and imagine that nervous system impacts all those systems. So when someone asks, but Irene, how can you just work with the nervous system? That's a valid point, because we're not just feeling our fight flight responses and hoping and wishing that they go away. We actually have to reverse engineer a little bit and work with the movement, the muscles, the cardiovascular response, the gut, the brainstem, how we relate to our environment, something called orienting, how we follow our impulses internally, how we listen to the passengers, so to speak, on that bus, which is our organs, our cells, etc. So part of the work when I work with my students in my programs is we aren't just learning theory about the nervous system. We're learning that and a lot more, but we're also doing physical practices. I call them neurosensory exercises, where we are taking our own hands and actually stimulating our sensory awareness. We're stimulating the sensory apparatus that is above our neck, namely our ears, our sound, our eyes. We don't get into taste and smell, but it is there. Our vestibular system we work with in some of the posture exercises that I do. We do movement, very gentle movement awareness lessons where we're connecting parts of our body. We're feeling into our ribs and our spine and our pelvis and our feet. We're working with the gut directly by touching it and imagining it and feeling it. We work with the breath, not to change the breath, but to feel how breath can go into different parts of the torso, not in a forceful way, but just in a way that opens up awareness to these areas. Because here's the thing, as I mentioned, when we've had a bad thing happen to us, it creates this cascade of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, going into higher alert, Fight, flight, freeze happens in whatever order it might need to for the given circumstance. And then those chemicals, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, that response is chemical and it is visceral, it is immune, it is endocrine, it is cardiovascular, it's fascial, it's the whole system. And so to work with the nervous system, you work with, or we work with, or I teach you how to work with all those other systems that branch away from that nervous system, from that little dot and then all the way out. I hope that makes sense. I wanted to bring you into that kind of viewpoint from how I see this work and how I see, we are working with the nervous system, and we're working with every single other system that the nervous system touches. And when we do that, it's a very interesting way of reverse engineering that stress response. We're essentially asking that survival physiology that's driving the front of the bus to not just stop driving, because sometimes we need that survival energy to protect us when we are in a real threat situation, but we need to train other drivers and ways to slow that bus down, to drive it more carefully, more cautiously, and to know how to stop it so that the people on the bus aren't always going in this fight, flight, freeze response. I hope that analogy makes sense as well. So to go back to that initial question, or that initial curiosity by someone who is watching one of my videos or reading one of my articles, it is more than just working with the nervous system. It is working with the entire body. If you look at some of my programs, one of the key programs I have is called Smart Body, Smart Mind. So we're creating a smarter body. And when I say body, I mean everything, not just the physical and the aerobic, but the visceral, the fascial, the immune, the endocrine, etc. And we're creating a smarter mind in how we connect and see and feel that which we sense in the body. So it's like this back and forth thing that is more than just, back and forth in some ways. It's this holographic system that we're working with. And then to take it one step further, I'll give you one more piece. When we are working with these pieces of us, we're actively engaging with the environment. If we do not have awareness of the environment under us, what we're sitting on, what we're standing on, the sky outside, the books over there, the picture over there, if we're not able to have that peripheral vision, so to speak, while we're paying attention to our internal systems, we run the risk of not integrating this work properly. And this is something that I see a lot of with students of mine who have done really good mind-body work, but the work hasn't taken them to that next level. They're very good at being with their stress response. They're very good at being with their viscera and their organs when they're in a very quiet, enclosed, controlled space. But the moment they go out into the world, which we do, I hope we do, to see the world and be in the world and interact with the world, all of that awareness gets shut down. That's not good, because that means that we're not keeping it as how we are all the time. So one of the other key pieces of the work that we do, that I teach, is how all of this stuff within the system connects with the environment, vice versa, and all the in-betweens, as I often say. Thank you for that curiosity, that question, to whoever asked me that. I don't remember where it was. I hope this video has been useful for all of you watching. Be sure to check out the other resources below this video. And if you are watching this when I put this video out, I'm gonna date it, we are in this time frame, it's early February. We're about to start up my online program, Smart Body, Smart Mind. Registration opens on the 17th of February. It closes on March 1st. This is the only time we run this very powerful program, and everything that I've talked about in this video is what you learn and more. So check that out if you haven't already. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time.